Rich Roll Podcast. Hey, everybody, welcome to the podcast. We have a very special edition of the show today because I am in Paris and I'm joined by an illustrious group of amazing individuals to share dispatches from the streets of the City of Lights and kind of share what's going on in this very special city right now. To my right, I've got the wonderful Katie Hoff, friend and friend of the podcast. You know her, two-time Olympian, 8-time world champion, and we are also joined by the amazing Elizabeth Beisel, 3-time Olympian, who is here in the capacity as a correspondent covering the swimming on the deck, talking to the swimmers. Thank you guys for being here.
Stoked to be here.
Yeah,
thanks for
pumped to be
having
here.
us.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah,
Let's
it's
go.
very exciting. And I've got my buddy Chris Morgan here as well, who I've known since like 1994. We go way back. Chris was the head coach at the 2008 Beijing Olympics for Switzerland, also assistant coach at Harvard. And you're here doing correspondence for French television,
for French
covering
TV,
swimming as well, which is exciting. So we're going to talk about swimming. We're going to talk about what it's like to be in Paris and all the good stuff. I feel very honored to be with all of you today. But I thought we could begin with just like a vibe check. Like, what's it like to be here right now, you know, like in this city while all of this stuff is going on?
Oh my
Who
gosh.
wants to start?
I mean, I'll say this is my first time back at the Olympics in 16 years. So it's kind of like a really big deal for me to be back and be in the energy and genuinely feel really at peace and excited. And I told someone yesterday, it's the first time I've really been able to look at the Olympics and look at being an Olympian and be like, wow, this is really cool. And I know that sounds crazy, but I'm like,
Because when you're here competing, your blinders are on and you're just so
Yes.
focused on your goal, you're not able to actually take the whole experience in.
correct.
I want to piggyback off of that moment because I've been at the pool nonstop. It's
Yeah.
like, this is my first time out of the pool, so I feel
You're unleashed.
I'm like, oh my God, actually in Paris. Like, I'm just on a classic like swimming trip. It's like hotel, pool.
Yeah.
So this is awesome. But the first session of swimming, to your point, I was watching warm up and I was like, these are the best swimmers in the world. Like, how lucky am I to be watching these best swimmers in the world? And then I went to thought number 2 and I was like, oh, that was me.
That was you.
Like, wait, that was literally, I'm sorry, what? Like, and Rich, you were so right. Like, you have the blinders on.
Yeah.
You never appreciate what you did while you were an athlete. So for me, similar to you, it's been so cathartic to kind of appreciate what I did in my last chapters of life as an athlete and now try to do them justice and give them everything that they deserve as now on the broadcast side of the sport, but also appreciate like, that was me.
Yeah.
My God, I worked hard. You know, like I was good, which you would never say as at least a swimmer.
But to have that perspective,
Yes.
you know,
It's been cool.
that can only come with time, right?
Yeah.
Agreed.
Because there's so much pressure when you're an athlete. Like you can't let your guard down too much.
Yeah.
And your life is very restricted, right? You're in the village, and I'm sure there's a lot of fun shit happening there, et cetera. But you're at the village, you take the bus to the venue, you do your thing, and you go back, and you're going to bed early, and like
Yeah.
the whole deal, right?
You're not appreciating,
Yeah.
at least I didn't until now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Chris?
Yeah, you know, it's really interesting just, and we were speaking before, being an American and being, you know, a patriot, but living abroad for 15 years and now being able to speak French and kind of hear the whispers in the corridors of what the French-speaking people are feeling and thinking about this. It's pretty neat, you know, because you get a little insight to maybe something. And French people they're very emotional. They're very, they like to talk. So it's neat to hear that. And in addition to being with the French TV, I'm also over at the Oli House, which is the Olympic, the World Olympians Association. So there's all kinds of people, and they love swimming. Like everyone, like last night, you know, after the finals, people are watching the replay of the finals. Like swimming is the thing this week. So it's really neat to see everyone and talking to the people in line that are just don't know swimming, but they're there to support their country. So
Right.
it's
So
really cool.
we're recording this on Monday. What is the date? The 29th. So last night was a big night at the pool for France because Leon Marchand won the 400 individual medley. And that is like not a small thing to do that in Paris with such a young, talented, like up and coming, like rising star in the sport.
I think two of the best 400 IMers here.
Yeah,
so
I know, right?
Probably for them, you
guys know a
the
little bit
pressure.
about the 400 IM
Done
between
a
the two
couple
of you.
of them.
Yeah. Between the two of us, too many. But no, your last night were either of you guys at the pool? I know you weren't.
Yeah.
You were at the pool.
Yeah.
It was maybe the loudest arena that I'd ever been in. And it was every single stroke that Leon took.
The breaststroke was like...
The breaststroke was nuts. And even Leon said it himself. Like, just for somebody to peak at an Olympics that is being hosted on their home soil, like, that has got to be one of the most incredible feelings. Like, we never had a home Olympics.
No, unless we make a comeback for
Yeah.
LA.
I mean, my God, is it too late? We got 4 years, girl.
It's a whole new world, you guys.
Listen, I swear, when I'm at that pool and I'm watching, I'm like, you know what?
Could I?
Yeah, I get that like sneaky little
You look at the
thought.
times, you're like, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when Katie and I were going, we'd still
It's
be up there.
competitive
We
right
could
now,
be on
right?
the podium. But then I also have the thought of like, well, I know what the 4 years look like, and
Yeah.
maybe
It's a
I'm
lot.
tapped out. Yeah.
Especially the 400 IM. It's
Well,
not
give people a sense of what that 4 years actually does look like, because I'm not sure. I mean, people understand like elite athletes at that level, they have to live this monk-like existence. But in particular, with respect to swimming, my sense is that it's really kind of at a different level, right?
Yeah.
The monk-like existence of being a swimmer, especially in an event like the 400 IM that is so, demanding and rigorous. Like, what does that life look like?
You go.
I mean, it's nonstop. Like, not only physically, but you're just thinking about it constantly. I feel like the only reprieve you get is maybe on a Saturday afternoon, because then Sunday you're like, I have Monday morning practice and I'm thinking about it again. And so it's so funny, like even people here, they're like, oh, are you still competing? And I'm like standing there with a cocktail in my hand. I'm like, do you think that's how it works? Like you're out with a drink and I'm competing tomorrow. So it's for 4 years, it's nonstop. And then I think a lot of people also think like, oh, well, it's every 4 years. Like you have benchmarks, you have world championships yearly. So you come back from the Olympics and you're leading into the next quad, you're preparing for world championship trials in 8 months. Mm-hmm. There's not really, the train doesn't really stop on the road to the next Olympics. And so for me, it was just all consuming all the time. How am I going to get better? What am I going to do with my body? What am I going to do with recovery? So it can be overwhelming.
Yeah. And in that event, the 400 IM, it's like, there's obviously different ways to train. And we'll get into the nitty gritty of that in a minute. But the 400 IM, which is the event that Katie and I swam, is kind of the decathlon of swimming. It's like,
For sure.
For those that are just like swimmer friendly or swimming friendly, it's 100 fly, 100 back, 100 breast, 100 free. So 100 of every stroke. And it's grueling. And you have to train like a distance swimmer in order to be good at this event. And it's relentless. It never stops. Whereas, and I'm not saying like one event is easier than the other, but one event is a little bit more sustainable than the other. So like swimming a sprint event, like a 50 free or 100 free, you can probably push into your 30s and still be at the top of your game at the Olympics. Whereas I didn't see a single 30-year-old plus in that final last night in the men's, and there certainly won't be in the women's.
Right.
And I think it's cool because the body is so interesting, but goes back to our point. It's like, yeah, I would love to swim in LA at a home Olympics.
Yeah.
But in the 400 IM,
In the back of your mind, could I pull this off?
I mean,
And I'm like, you don't know if you don't try. I'm not saying it's going to happen at all, but
the amount of times we've looked at each other in a ready room and been like, oh my God.
Right.
Like whatever we call it, 400 IM stomach. Like it's just like so grueling. And you know what you're in for. You're like about to go to battle and you're like, I'm about to be in so much pain, whether it's a good race, a bad race, a middle of the road race, it's just going to be really painful.
Yeah.
What is it like in that green room environment right before you walk out for a final and everybody's sort of sizing each other up? There's definitely like a tension or an intensity in the air. Are people playing mind games with each other? Are you just focusing on your own race, like visualizing it? Like, what did that look like for you guys? And what do you what is going on when you see, visuals of that, at this meet in particular?
I would say that room separates the good from the great, because that is where it's like all about the mental game.
Yeah.
Because every single athlete at the Olympics is physically prepared.
Yeah.
The hay is in the barn, the work is done. But those few minutes leading up to a race where your mindset is either, I'm going to kick ass and this is mine, like, come and get it, or you kind of crumble under the pressure of, this is my once every 4 years chance to make a name for myself, to get sponsorships, to feed myself. Like, I think that's maybe one thing that we can dive into is just like, swimming is awesome, but it does happen all year round, not just once every 4 years. But we make negative dollars swimming. Like none of us are really in it for the money. But when money comes around, it's crucial to kind of capitalize on that. And so in the ready room, all of these things are lightly in the back of your mind, and it's up to you to, like, where are you shining that flashlight? Are you shining your flashlight on the negative thoughts or the positive thoughts? But I think I always was so comforted when you were in a ready room with me because I knew we were always on the same wavelength. Same page. We knew it was going to suck.
Yeah, we didn't even have to say it.
Yeah, and this is one of my best friends. Like, of course, we both want to win, but a win for Katie is also a win for me. And I think that's something that Team USA does. Like, we have a really great mindset in terms of that, but...
Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting to see, like, when I watch it on TV, like, the different personalities, because everyone's going to handle it differently. Like, you have the people that are more showboaty, and that's their way of showing their nerves. You know, like, I think Lily King told the story of where she just stared at Effanova, stood behind her and just stared until she made eye contact with her. Like,
I believe it.
I could never do that. That would not be my way. There's the people joking around, and, like, you saw Ledecky and Titmus, like, smiling and talking with each other. And then you have the people that are just like blank staring down. So it's interesting to see how people show their nervousness. And I don't think there's one good way or the other, but it's finding how you let the nerves out in like a positive way and not just sit there and get to the dark side,
right?
You know?
But I think all of those signals are very subtle in swimming in comparison to track and field. Like, I was watching the Olympic trials for track and field, and Noah Lyles comes out, and it is pure theater. Like, it's a performance art. What
I actually
he's
met
doing.
him yesterday.
You know, he's got the kit dialed, and he pulls out the Yu-Gi-Oh card and shows it to the camera, and he's doing a dance. And then before the finals, walking out with Snoop Dogg in his, like, you know, suit, and he's got the metal briefcase, and it's going to be the big reveal. I mean, this guy has thought through and it would be one thing to do that and not perform, but to do that and then win, like, that's what gets the average person like excited about a sport that they might not be that familiar with. And I think those athletes really understand it, whether it's Sha'Carri Richardson or, you know, or Noah and some of the other people. And I feel like we could use a little bit of that in swimming. Like, it would be fun.
I mean, Lily King kind of is that for us a little bit. Like, she loves, you know, she was like doing the finger wag. And like, I think that's also why she received so much negative feedback, because the swimming world wasn't ready for it. They were like, wait, you're talking smack and you're doing all this stuff. Like, we don't have people like that, but I think we should.
Well, we did at one time. I mean, Chris and I come from the generation where Gary Hall Jr. is coming out doing the boxing and the Muhammad Ali, and he's draped in the robe and like the
true.
whole
That
thing,
was 04.
you know?
That's true.
Yeah, we need. I think we need a little injection of that.
We're all just goody two shoes. We're just brown nosers.
We're all friends.
Like,
and we all love each other.
Like, you
but
know,
you know what? I so agree with that, because like, being here with NBC, it's tough because, and I'm guilty of this. You're guilty of this.
Yes.
Like, we do not allow ourselves to be accessed by the media. We, as in when we're athletes, at least 72 hours before we start competition as swimmers at the Olympics. And I'm like, NBC is kind of like, can't we get access to these athletes? Like, we want to tell their stories. We want to showcase them. Like, this is the once every 4 years, to your point, that we get to kind of tell these stories and show these people what they're made of and how exciting it is. And I don't know when it's going to change. I think swimming is always a little bit far behind, but like, I'm interviewing some park skaters the day before their race, their competition.
Their competition,
and they're like, yeah, what's up? Like, we're gonna.
Did you see the clip where the skateboarders' bus broke down and then they all just got out and said, no worries, we'll just skate there?
We're gonna skate to the rink.
That is like pure gold. Stuff like that, those moments.
And I think that's where swimming needs to shift towards. I think it's definitely going to move at a glacial pace. But I do think the more like... pomp and circumstance we get is better.
Chris, from a coaching perspective, back to the ready room, kind of green room, like what is the counsel that you give your athletes or have given your athletes at a heightened experience like the Olympic Games to get their head straight so they don't get freaked out?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I tapped into a lot of what my mentors taught me. And you have to adapt to their personality, the athlete. I mean, I know Elizabeth when she's in the ready room, I mean, she's pretty giggly. And then what we didn't talk about is the Phelps face, right?
Yeah.
Because when that happened, and that was I think it was in Rio in
16.
2016. And, that became like, Jimmy Fallon was talking about it. Everyone,
so many gifts.
Many memes.
It was great for our sport, to have the Phelps face. And, but when you know Michael, as we all do, the Phelps face, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, but I think it was just teaching them based on their personality and certainly calming the nerves. Ironically, just this morning before going in, I had a nice cafe au lait and was sitting next to David Berkoff. And I said,
Oh, wow.
How is she? And he said, she is nervous, and there was the but. And it was really interesting to hear from father, coach, Olympic gold medalist in the same event. And then she qualified first this morning.
Yeah.
So, even what is a coach, father, counsel, basically it's just, I think it's just calming the soul, right, of that athlete. And with one of, an athlete who I worked with in 2008, Dominique Maitri, who in the ready room before his prelim swim, when he qualified first, I mean, he was like Elizabeth. He was kind of laughing and, moving around, chatting people. Who's this Swiss kid, right? And then he qualifies first. And then that created a whole nother cinema after with some of the American coaches I know. But yeah, I think really it's just, and we're nervous as coaches, right? When you look at some of the personalities of coaches like Dean Boxall, the coach of, I mean, I love it. Like, I just love watching it just because he's going nuts in the stands, right? It looks like he's at a rock concert. And then there was a famous French coach named Philippe Lucas when he was coaching Laure Manadou, back in 2004. I mean, he was like straight face and scary, right?
Remember the chains he would wear?
Yeah, the chains. Still wears, right?
Still wears.
And I think that persona or that personality of the coach can also help, right? Like, maybe it's helping, I don't pronounce her name right, but Ariane is probably part of her vibe in the ready room comes from Dean, right? So I think we as coaches need to also be not only mentors and soothe our athletes, but also be aware that our personality can affect what the media thinks, what other people think, what other swimmers think, what other coaches
And how their
think,
athletes
right?
feel.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
I'd be fired up. I'd swim for Dean.
You mentioned
I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
That's not the right energy for me.
Yeah.
Like, I would need someone.
Dean is the Australian coach?
Yeah.
Yes, of Ariane Timis. Yeah. I just
Maybe
think.
I just go to a rock concert with him.
I'm just saying, like, I don't want
Because
that
what is, for people that aren't steeped in swimming, what is it about his disposition?
Oh, he goes, what would you say, Katie? He's going nuts. He
goes
goes bananas.
Absolute bananas.
In the stands with all the
In the
public,
stands, which I kind of just want it to be about Ariane.
True. Yeah.
Like,
Good
I
point.
feel like at that point it's about the swimmer, and I just feel like I would want it to be about the swimmer. And I think the cameras always go to him.
Yeah.
So that's my only thought
That's a
on
good
that.
point, yeah.
You mentioned Dave Berkoff, former world record holder in the 100 backstroke, Seoul 1988
88, yeah.
gold medalist. Did he win the gold?
So he was silver individually and gold in the relay.
Gold in the
Yeah.
relay, right. Pioneered the underwater dolphin kick back in the day before they had the 15-meter rule, and he basically swam the entire 100 meters underwater.
Yeah.
But he was really at the forefront of pioneering what is now, basically what everyone does, which is work on their underwater dolphin kick because it's so much faster than it is swimming on the surface. But what people who don't really follow swimming closely might not know is that this incredible champion who went to Harvard, his daughter is now on the Olympic team and qualified
cool.
for
First.
finals this
57.9.
evening, which is kind of an amazing thing.
Is it her first time under 58? I'm not sure, but it's a good time for her.
Yeah, great time. And I actually got to speak to her after the race, and I was like, holy shit. And she was like, I don't know where that came from, but it felt amazing.
Oh, that's
like, those are the best, because that's that confidence boost that you need at the biggest event of your life to know, like, oh, I got it in prelims, like, I'm only going to get better.
Especially
from
when
here.
Dad said
The
she was
easy-
nervous
the
a couple
easy
hours
speed.
before.
Right.
speed.
Easy
The easy
speed.
speed.
We love
Explain
an
what
easy
easy speed
morning.
is for people that aren't swimmers.
It's just like, when you go on a run and you just get that like runner's high and it's just easy and you're like, oh, I could keep going. It's similar to that, where you just don't ever tire out and you just feel at ease. the entire race. Never happens for us.
I was gonna say, I don't think
Maybe
I
the first
ran a
100.
marathon and I never got the runner's high.
Yeah, you're like, I was promised this.
I was promised this runner's high, but I have felt easy speed in swimming.
Yeah.
I feel like it's like, you feels effortless, and then you come into the wall and the time is way faster than you could have ever imagined. And so just everything, it's like, what is that? Flow state.
It's like the athletic version of a flow state.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think
Not
some
a-
swimmers say after is that's when they think, man, I should have gone faster.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's
Yeah.
like, I don't know if you could have.
Right.
But
Because you
swimming
were in
is
that flow
weird
state.
because I think what people who aren't swimmers have a hard time understanding is that the best swimmers know how to make the water work for them. So it's not about fighting the water or muscling your way through it. It's not about just like churning and burning as hard as you can. It's about like this ease that you feel when
Yeah.
when you're making the water work for you. And it feels like, oh, I could have gone faster, but had you kind of tensed up and tried to make that happen, you actually
not.
probably would have gone slower.
Yeah.
I have. Like,
Yeah.
I've done that like in a prelim and been like, oh my gosh, that was so easy. And then I worked 100 times harder at night and went like a 10th faster, but could barely get out of the water. Like, it's the most, I think it's one of the most frustrating things
Yeah.
in
Right.
swimming.
Yeah.
Speaking of Australia, let's talk about the Australia-USA rivalry. There's been a lot of press, a lot of ink
Right.
spilled about this rivalry. It's legendary in many ways. And it was sort of heightened in the wake of the Australia and USA Olympic trials because there was some smack talk around the whole cowbell thing. So for people who
I don't know.
who
What's your
don't know what
opinion?
that is, maybe one of you guys could take a crack at just explaining that.
You want me to try?
Yeah.
All right. So
I'll just say that
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
actually don't know if you and Missy and I talked about this. I don't know if you and I agree on our thoughts on this. So I'm very
interesting.
curious
Oh,
to
good.
see.
Rich, you're welcome. House divided here, I see.
I don't know.
All right. So here's what happened. The skinny is Kate Campbell, who is a multiple-time Olympian for Australia, made some comments back in the spring about how she just hated how many times she had to hear the national anthem at the last Olympics and the last World Championships, how we ring an infernal cowbell, which was her words. Infernal cowbell. And it's like a tradition. Like when we send our athletes off to the ready room right before their race, we ring a cowbell, we chant USA, we'll chant Katie's name, whatever it is. It's just like, we're your hype squad. Like we want you going to the ready room feeling loved, feeling supported.
Yeah.
And basically, once she made those comments, they went viral. And that's when a lot of the US swimmers, like Michael, like a lot of people.
There's videos of Michael holding
Yes.
a phone, watching this to gauge his like real time reaction to this. And you mentioned Phelps' face, right?
Yeah.
Like he's just like, oh, this is a gift.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
'Cause this is-
so
Yeah.
like if Michael were still swimming, game over.
Yeah.
He's not even swimming, and
Yeah,
he's like,
yeah.
I'm fired up.
So he's like red.
Okay,
Yeah.
wait. So now I want to hear your opinion, and then I'll give you mine.
So I guess I just feel like it's been, first of all, this happened last year. Like she was interviewed almost a year ago, and then
Yeah.
it kind of made this resurgence. And I just feel like, and they haven't done it as much as I thought they were going to do it, NBC, which I'm glad,
Yeah.
is because I feel like the people commenting on it and the people that have issue with it aren't competing. And so I feel like it's I was worried, and they haven't done it, that the storyline was going to cloud everything else, like the coverage of the swimmers. And I just felt like it was blown way out of proportion. That is my opinion on
Yeah.
it. And
I don't
we
disagree.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that kind of annoyed me. I'm like, don't blow this out of proportion. Kate Campbell's actually friends with a lot of the U.S. swimmers.
Mm-hmm.
And like, yes, she made that comment, but if you watch her follow-up interview, it wasn't like, she's like, no, like part of it was just like joking around. Like that's how the Aussies talk.
She's
like
cheeky,
that.
yeah.
She's cheeky.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's like, I guess the U.S. doesn't have a sense of humor. Like she was kind of just trash talking, but we've
Yeah.
been trash talking the Aussies for decades.
Yeah.
So I just felt like, I was like, okay, it doesn't need to be so heightened, but that's just my opinion.
No, and we
Yeah.
love the Aussies. That's the
Love
thing.
the
like,
Aussies, yeah.
Like they're our best friends on the pool deck.
Yeah.
At least when we
I
were
have a
swimming.
tattoo with one of them.
Yeah, literally, yeah. Literally the person that you raced in the 400 IM, you are best friends with, have a tattoo with them. Like, that's
Yeah.
the swimming world. Whereas, like, maybe in other worlds, it's not the same.
It's
but-
hard to hate a culture that loves swimming so much.
Yeah.
And you go to Australia and it's just all about swimming there.
the
You know,
best.
and it's a really beautiful thing. But I love the rivalry. I vividly remember the Australian relay with Michael Klim and the
In
guitar
2000.
and the guitar and all that kind of stuff. Like it's the relays where this all really kind of comes out. And we got to see it the other night with the men's 4x100 relay which USA won, and then the women's version of that, which Australia won. So this is like keeping that tension and that rivalry.
Keeping everything in check.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
It's alive.
But what is it like on the deck with the swim when you're I mean, you're there like seeing it all like firsthand as it's unfolding in real time.
Yeah, it's like any normal meet that like the Team USA warm-up area in the back pool, which nobody really ever sees, is pretty close to the Aussies, and it's like business as usual, like cowbells, Team USA cheers, like we're not changing anything. But like I'm in the mix zone, so I get all the athletes when they walk by me, and like I'm saying good job to all of them. Like they all deserve a good job. So I'm like, if Caleb McEwen's gonna walk by me, I'm gonna say, dude, that was an awesome swim.
Yeah.
But there's always a rivalry, whether it's USA versus Australia or Great Britain or China, Russia, whatever. But I love the story for how long it goes back, especially to 2000 Sydney Olympics. Like, it's fun. And I appreciate a good rivalry. But I think people need to also understand is like, yes, on paper, huge rivalry, but in person, homies.
Yeah.
Like, friends, hanging out.
Yeah.
Like, it's not... There's no animosity.
I think that's my issue with it. Maybe I am too goody two shoes, and I should be more like, yes, let's go.
Katie Switzerland over here. She's like, okay with that.
I just,
You're literally Switzerland.
Yeah, you are Switzerland. Yeah,
I would still take a side, though. I would still take a side.
So if you don't know, Elizabeth is the person who is on deck, who's grabbing the interviews with the athletes, like essentially right after they finish. Like, so if you're watching the coverage on Peacock or NBC, and some swimmer has just won a gold medal, and you did this at the Olympic trials as well, you're the first person that they're talking to, basically, before they even get to see their friends or their coach or anything like that. And it's always hilarious to me because they're even if it's just the 50 free, like they're so winded, like
I know.
It's like
I know.
They're not ready to talk to anyone yet, and your job is to like get something interesting out of them immediately. And as somebody who's a podcast host, I'm like, how do you think of what's the right question to ask? How do you come up with this? And what is your strategy for getting something compelling out of these athletes in the immediate, like I'm talking immediate aftermath of them having done something magical?
Yeah, it's definitely a privilege to be in the seat that I'm in. And I'm sharing the position with Melissa Stark. So I'm doing the prelims, she's doing the finals, and we'll switch. Like I did a few finals last night. But it's one of those things where I've been in the athlete position so many times. I want to do them right and not ask them a basic question like, how does it feel to win a gold medal? Like, can we put some effort in, please? So what I'll do is, like, I'll learn Katie Hoff's story, like what sets her apart, what's different about her. I'll learn her personality through scrolling through her social media or watching previous interviews that she's done. Like, I want to be so prepared and make them feel like, oh, this person actually cares about me and my swimming. And you'll always get a better interview. Like, if you showed up to this unprepared, like, it would be fine, but it wouldn't be great. And so for me, it's like a lot of these people are also my peers. So I also respect them so much because I'm friends with them. And I do think there's an element of, like, I might have kind of an edge on everybody else just because I have that rapport with them. Yeah. But there's a lot that goes into a 2 to 3 question interview. And I love it. Like, and here's the thing about swimmers, and I make a conscious effort in doing this in every interview that I do, regardless of who it is. Swimmers are so humble. They hate like talking about what they just did.
Yeah.
Like, if Katie Hoff breaks a world record and I'm the first person to interview her and I just started off with something basic, like, tell me about that race, which has happened to us far too many times.
You're like,
you broke and you broke a world record, but you would never be like breaking a world, like you would never bring it up.
Yeah.
So my thing is like, Katie Hoff, you just broke a world record. Like the last 3 years have been so up and down for you. Like I kind of like tee them up. Just so they don't feel like they have to boast about themselves. And maybe that's me projecting, but I love it.
You're like the ultimate hype girl.
I know. I'm like, we should be hype. Like, this shouldn't be a basic interview. Like, my God, I'm talking to you before you're talking to your wife at home. Like, I better do you justice. So that's and like keep
Well, you got the right
high.
energy.
You have to.
You're coming in hot.
I do. Sometimes
Yeah.
when I get the more like quiet introverted ones, they're like,
Yeah.
it was good.
Maybe not like rowdy energy, but like you know, like
Yeah.
rowdy's on a whole different level.
Oh, he's
with,
like 10 octaves
I
above
know.
his normal talking
Yeah,
voice.
yeah.
Like he's the best.
Maybe we can go around to each of you. I'm curious which story, and it doesn't necessarily have to be swimming, but maybe it could be swimming. Like, what's the story that has you the most excited, but one maybe that you feel like isn't getting as much attention? Like, not the one that's the headlines, but like, man, this story I think is really cool over here. I want to draw people's attention to it. It could be an athlete. It could be, you know, is there anything that comes to mind for that?
I'm thinking more about like maybe not a particular athlete, but what happens behind the scenes for these athletes. And I know that it's like circulating around social media, but I don't think the Gen Pop really understands. Like, these athletes are on an hour-and-a-half bus ride to the pool and then an hour-and-a-half bus ride back. Oh, and then they do it again for finals. So they're on a bus for 6 hours a day at the Olympics. The food in the village is not amazing. Like, I know you love to talk about fueling and just like what you're putting in your body. You're expected to compete at the highest level you've ever competed at, and they're running out of food. Or the
Is that true? Are they?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
really? Oh, I didn't know that. They're running out of food?
See, that's why we're here, Rich.
Amazing.
Like, one of the athletes.
Not amazing, but
yeah,
like,
not amazing.
Amazing
but,
from a story perspective.
right. And like one of the athletes I was talking to on Team USA the other day, they got back from finals, which in Paris time are late because we're trying to cater as much as we can to East Coast prime time. So they're getting back to the village around 1 to 2 a.m. And the only thing left in the village cafeteria was bread rolls and sardines.
Wow.
That's insane.
And that's what these athletes are fueling themselves on.
And
at
then
the
they have
biggest.
to get up at what time to get to prelims in the in the
Prelims
morning?
are at 11, so they're a little later, but still you're up at
Still.
7, activating, eating, like waking up. So I think like
And
that's
that
a
cardboard,
story.
they're on those cardboard beds.
I hear they're not the
Cardboard
worst.
They're not. There's
they're
been a
not
lot
the
of TikToks and a lot of videos made about that.
A lot.
Yeah. So I think it's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that like maybe isn't getting told on
logistics,
broadcast. Yeah, because the literal motto of the Olympics, I feel like, is expect the unexpected.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's so different than trials. Like, I think, like, for me, like, I swam the exact same schedules in 2008 at Olympic trials and the Olympics, but the Olympics was so much more exhausting because not only do you have the transportation, but like you're getting, like for the distance swims, you're getting blood tested so they test EPO. Like that's a whole nother factor, like, you know, because you hate needles. But like there's so many factors at the Olympics that are added on that don't happen at the trials that I think, at least from my experience, I didn't factor in because how do you know until you're there?
And if you're succeeding and you have a packed schedule because you're doing multiple events, on top of that, there's all these media obligations
Yes.
as well, right? So you're doing
yeah.
interviews and interviews and interviews. So that's cutting into your rest and recovery time as well.
Yeah, which is crucial. I mean, you know, as a coach.
Yeah,
like,
definitely. And I think just talking about what you said, even with Team USA, is, you know, without mentioning a name, and I applaud the people who made this decision. For one of the U.S. top swimmers, is they're now in a hotel across the street.
Yep.
Just
Yeah.
to make things easier. And
Yeah.
you know, even one of the U.S. open water swimmers, I know it's like, it's a grind, right? They're trying to just still train, get the training in, but come watch final. I mean,
Yeah.
it is brutal.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Speaking of open water, how are we feeling about the Seine?
no bueno.
I know. It doesn't. I was looking during opening ceremonies. I was like, wait, so all these boats, are they not ejecting pollution
Yeah,
into the Seine? Like, didn't they just clean it and now they're polluting it again?
But it's not the entire Seine. There's that one section that I think they're trying to keep clean. for
How do
the
you do
purpose
that?
of doing a loop for the open water swim and for the triathlon. And it seems to be a very fluid situation in that every day they're testing it. They put a lot of money into like some filtration thing and
Yeah.
these bypasses and stuff like
Right.
that to clean up this historically very dirty river. And they had gotten to the point where it had passed enough tests, 2 weeks ago, that the mayor and a select group of people like jumped in. There was a lot of media around that to prove that it was clean. And then it rained like 2 days in a row.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't clean.
Yeah.
And that was the day that the triathletes were reconning the course. And they were then told, like, no, you can't get in. So I think it's a day-to-day thing, whether it's going to be clean enough for that. If it's not, then the triathlon becomes a biathlon, which would be really tragic.
Oh my God.
Because they can't change the rest of the course. The open water swimming, I think they have a backup plan to move it somewhere else.
They have a backup plan.
Oh, that's good.
But yeah, it's this day-to-day thing. And I think it opens a broader conversation around just Paris in general, and for people that aren't here, what it's like to actually be here. I think there is to this idea that maybe there's some misconceptions. Like the athlete village isn't like in the city center. It's like it's sort of distant and away. It's not like you walk out of your dorm and you go across the street to the pool. Like it's these long bus rides. But in the city center, particularly like on the north side of the Seine, it's incredibly quiet. Like the streets are empty.
Yeah,
and there was this
quiet.
sense like,
Weird.
oh, Paris is going to be overrun. It's going to be mobbed. It's going to be impossible to get around. And I've been here for 2 weeks, and it's been an absolute delight. Super easy to get around. No crowds.
Right.
And so I don't know if that's going to change because we're still just a couple days into the games. But you would almost have, like, if you're a kilometer north of the Seine in one of these neighborhoods, you might not even know that the Olympics are even going on. It's like business as usual. It's strange, right?
It's so, I mean, where swimming is, I took a metro to get to where we are right now to record. It was only 30 minutes, but we're north of the Seine, and it's in a place called La Défense, and it is just like people, I'm right at the subway or the metro station, and people are coming and going from work. Like, it literally is just a normal day. And like, of course, there's crowds outside of the arena when the swimming is happening, but otherwise, Rich, I totally agree. I am a Parisian person now. Like I know my way around the city.
too,
I got
right?
my coffee shop.
I feel like I live here.
I know. I'm like getting better at French. Not that great.
I mean, the way you
for
just
help.
said that sounded so
La
like,
Défense
fancy.
Arena.
Yeah.
Oui, oui.
Yeah, I feel like, because I think about Beijing or even Athens, and it was just like, it was very clear that the Olympic Games were there. There were boards up, all these things. But yeah, I feel like I woke up for a run yesterday morning, and I'm like, where is everybody? It's
Right.
like 8 a.m.
I know.
right now. What's
But
happening?
it is a later kind of city, and
That's
it was
true.
Sunday morning. I had the same experience though.
That's
You're like,
fair.
wow, it's like a ghost
I
town.
know, I'm like, I can just
The
feel
Olympics, but the Olympics are happening here, right?
I know. It's kind of
Yeah.
nice, though. I feel like they've done a great, and maybe it's intentional, and we're all thinking that it's just happenstance. But like, it's really nice that it's not. That I also don't feel like we're displacing the people, which I always feel like
Right.
happens at an Olympic
Although
Games.
I think part of the reason it feels empty is a lot of Parisians just got out of town.
Yeah,
Oh, they're probably Airbnb-ing their flats.
They are. So
Yeah.
I've just having lived here or in Europe for 15 years, know a lot of Parisian people, and even have a friend who lives like right next to the start of the open water swim if it happens, and he's like, "Come over, we'll have some drinks, we'll sit on the balcony and watch." And I'm like, you know what? Rather than using the credential, I think I'm gonna go sit on the balcony and have a couple cocktails and watch the open water.
1,000%, and you'll probably have a better view because you're up high.
Did
But
you
I
guys?
think-
sorry, go ahead. No, go
I
ahead.
think one thing that's really interesting just about being calm is, not to bring it up, but if you really look, the number of police, gendarmes, and other countries is formidable.
Yeah.
Is the word I use. And
There's a lot of
walking
security.
around with, literally, and
Intense.
not to bring it up, but just with guns that are ready to be
Finger on
used
the trigger.
finger on the
Right. Ready to
trigger,
go.
literally.
I would
So
agree
I-
with that, but I would provide a caveat, which is, yes, there are clusters of security everywhere you go. They sort of gather in groups of 4 or 5, whether it's gendarmerie or military, but it doesn't. I don't have the sense that it's like a high alert situation.
No,
like they're
it's
kind
not
of like
intimidating.
joking and they're
Yeah,
very
they're-
approachable, and
they-
you'll see this like really cute young woman, and she's got she's like in her like uniform and everything like that. And you're like, oh, how nice! Except she's carrying a gigantic rifle. You're like,
A gun the size of
I don't have
her.
the sense that like they're ready to shoot anybody.
No,
It's just like it's a sense of like
protection.
anyway,
Like I feel like I actually, which sounds weird, like I walked past like 12 of them last night. I'm like, I feel protected. I feel at ease. which is a weird feeling when you walk by that many guns.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I feel like they're all so friendly.
Yeah.
Like they're all so nice.
I
I'm
was
like,
like
showing
taking
them.
photos
Yeah.
with them. Like the first day I got here and I went on a run, I ran by Notre Dame and there was a whole bunch of them and they were like, hey. And I thought I was like in the wrong place and I was in trouble. And they're like, no, will you take a photo of us or whatever? And then I took a selfie with
that's
them.
awesome.
Yeah.
I'm like, so,
I want to say something
yeah.
actually about the people that are here in Paris. Like, I think there's such a stereotype of, Parisians absolutely hate Americans.
Yeah.
I have had such a wonderful experience. And like, I've definitely tried. Like when I go into a coffee shop, like I do try to order in French. They know immediately I'm not.
But just the effort.
But
is
I think the
important,
effort
yeah.
really goes a long way. And I've had, like, I cannot wait to come back and like play tourist.
Yeah.
Because I love this place. Like it's been
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah,
I think
everyone's
that's what
helpful.
We stereotype, and having again lived.
You've
is
lived,
we-
you've lived,
Yeah.
here for a long
stereotype,
time.
and you know when foreigners come to the U.S. and growing up in the Bay Area, it's like you don't speak English but they're trying, right? They're trying to speak English. They have
Yeah.
a thick accent, and I think. You know, and this might sound horrible to say, but I think I call it innocent ignorance of most Americans. And having now lived, all French people want is that you just try. And then if you don't try, they're like,
Yeah.
okay. And then they'll speak their best English. So, Parisians are great.
Yeah.
They're great. They're kind of like New Yorkers, but they speak French.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I
Way
love it.
cooler.
I've been having a great time. If anything, like I speak to waiters and restaurateurs and stuff like that, and they're experiencing like a downturn in their business. So it's one thing if you're in one of those protected zones close to the river, where they're kind of really trying to keep people at bay. And there's been a lot of people are like, you know, you can't do anything in Paris. Like you see on social media, it's like, you can't move around. It's terrible. It's the worst thing ever. It's not really true. It's you're minorly inconvenienced, but if you are a business owner in one of those zones or proximate to one of those zones, you're suffering. But even in the neighborhoods like around where we are right now and north of the Seine, they were expecting to be like overrun with business. And it's like, it's like not really. So I don't know whether that's a pure attendance thing or what's happening, and I've never been to an Olympiad before, so I don't know by comparison.
This is your
how it's
first?
different. Yeah.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
And
Wow.
the irony is that I'm running around doing all kinds of stuff like this that I'm less apprised of what's actually happening in the competition than I would be if I was sitting at home watching it all on television.
Are you going to get to go to anything?
Yeah, I'm going to be going. I'm going to swimming and track and field. You guys, I'm trying to get a ticket for tonight. I still haven't
For
been able to
swimming?
get
Oh.
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
We got some
We can pull some
connections.
strings.
Maybe. Anyway,
pull some strings.
we'll talk
put in
about that
an
later. Anyway, but I am going to be, attending some events. I just haven't been able to yet. So can't wait to do that.
I think it's like, the stands are full, right? Swimming,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
packed.
yeah, you can't get tickets. It's sold, the tickets are sold out.
Yeah.
for everything.
So it's
And
not
even-
like you're. Yeah.
I went by on the way to swimming last night and saw archery, and it was packed.
Amazing.
Like,
Which is
for
so
women's art. I mean, and it's not anything negative about women's archery. Koreans won as usual, but then the Mexican team got third, and they were going. It was awesome. I think
Yeah.
they were like taking tequila shots on the street.
Yeah.
As
It was
they
awesome.
should be. As they should be. That's amazing.
One of the things that I think is really cool about this Team USA in swimming is that it is an interesting mix of veterans and up-and-comers. It's not dominated by all new people, and it's not dominated by the stars we've always known. It's like this hybrid, right? So you have Caleb Dressel, and you've got Ryan Murphy, and you've got Katie Ledecky, and these people that have been around for a long time. And then you have all of these new names, and to see them together on relays and kind of the mentorship of the old guard with the new people coming up, I think is really cool. I don't know, is it always that way? This feels like it feels a little bit different in that regard.
You can speak to it better because you were actually at camp, but from an outsider looking in, it looks like the team looks like it has way more chemistry than when I was swimming. It
Yeah.
just feels like there's more like we're going to help each other versus we're in tunnel vision and we're all out for ourselves.
Our own individual
Yeah.
events.
Yeah, I do think that's been a cultural shift for sure.
For sure.
And you, I mean, for the listeners, I'll brag on Katie. like her first Olympic team, she was a fresh 15-year-old in 2004.
Well, both of you were 15,
We were both 15.
when you
What are you
made
talking
when you made
about?
your first Olympic
well,
team,
I know,
right?
but we're talking about Katie here, okay?
No, she's like basically what she means by fresh
She was
15 is
15
like
and one
super
month
naive
older.
and homeschooled.
No, I meant you just turned 15. You have an early
Okay.
June birthday,
so you
whatever.
were 6 months after that, but okay.
Anyways, I think there is something to be said for like being a 15-year-old on a team with a bunch of 20-something-year-olds, and like, how do you relate to a teenager that doesn't
Yeah.
even have a license and like make them feel welcomed? And I think that happened enough times in a row with you and me and Ledecky and Missy that like we kind of adopted these teenage kids, like literal kids,
Yeah.
onto the team, and it helped shift the culture. And like even Michael in 2000, he was 15.
Yeah.
So I think we had a run of like 4 Olympics where we always had a 15-year-old on the team. And I do think that helped the cultural shift to where we are now, where it's like, we don't care your age, we don't care where you're from. Like, you have a seat at this table
Yeah.
at the Olympic team, and we're gonna make you feel like you belong here. Because I know you and I definitely did not feel like we belonged.
No, we just felt almost like ostracized
Yeah.
a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like now, and maybe it's social media, but just like watching like camp and watching them all do their TikToks, and like I
Oh,
just
yeah.
feel like they're all having so much fun, and
Yeah.
it's not just like these segregated cliques.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Speaking of TikToks, my new favorite Olympian is this female rugby
Ilona?
player, Ilona
Yeah,
Maher.
yeah.
She is a superstar.
She's
amazing.
hysterical.
She has
Yeah.
exploded. I don't know
Yeah.
how many Instagram followers she had before the Olympics, but she now has like over like 1.3 or something
saw
like
that.
in
Yeah,
like
she crushed a
couple
million.
days because
Yeah.
she's making these amazing videos, and like
Yeah.
my daughters are like, "You got to see this woman,"
Oh,
and
yeah.
everybody's talking about
Yeah.
her. Like, it's such a cool thing for an athlete in a sport that probably doesn't get enough recognition or ink or attention to come in and then like just she's so made for these videos, right? And it's like telling these stories from the village. She's so funny and fantastic.
The villa.
Like I just Have you seen? You know who I'm
Yeah.
talking
Oh,
about?
yeah, I know.
Yeah. No, it's fantastic. We need somebody to do that for swimming. But again, back to the earlier point we made, like, no swimmer's gonna be doing that.
Like right before. I
Yeah.
know. And why are we like that? Like, I feel like there's such a stigma of like, well, if you're focusing on TikTok or if you're focusing on posting on social, that somehow detracts from your focus, which maybe for some people, but I actually don't. I think it is fun.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I don't like the idea that athletes should feel pressure to
No.
use social media.
Right.
Like, isn't it enough that they're trying to be the best
For sure.
at what they do? And I think there is that sense, like, oh, if you want to have a career, not only do you have to be the best at your sport, you also have to be broadcasting all this stuff all
Yes,
the time.
yes.
But I think for the right personality type, that person who's just constructed to be an extrovert in that way, and is just kind of funny and entertaining. The sky's the limit. Like if you're looking for like Olympic athletes, I don't think most people realize they're not getting paid except at the highest level. They're working jobs to try to make it all work, and it's hard, right? And here is an opportunity for that right personality type to kind of create their own future by the use of this thing that we all have in our back pocket.
Yeah.
Kind of for the first time.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, USOPC has a program I'm a part of. It's like the USA Creators, and they're bringing over people from TikTok and Meta, like never been done before. And I just think it's incredible because we can collaborate with these TikTokers, with these people who have millions of followers, and it's only going to elevate the Olympics. But I know there's varying opinions on that, of bringing over someone who knows nothing about the Olympics, knows nothing about these sports, but
And there's a lot of
it.
there's a lot of rules. Let's just leave
There's
it
a
at
lot
that.
of
There's a lot of
rules.
rules
Yeah. There's a
about
lot
what
of
you
rules.
can and cannot say.
Yes, yes.
That we're all sitting here very conscious of as we're trying to chat openly.
What's interesting is I don't know about you guys, but 2008 we were all there. That's where I signed up for my Facebook account. That's in the village, and so now you think we're 16 years later.
Yeah.
And
It's a whole
and these
new
kids,
world.
I don't know how old Thomas, I'll slaughter his last name,
Heilman,
Is he 15?
17.
17. Okay.
Yep.
Well, so even he was 1, right, when we were there. So for
Thanks,
him,
Chris.
Well, I know.
Yeah.
Well,
That's why they're like, wait, who
we're
are
a lot
you?
older, the two of us. But yeah, how and what we were talking about before, and not to, is how do these young kids, and then how is it affecting their training, right? Like, why aren't they TikToking and everything before when, when you ladies were training your asses off at
Yeah.
that age, and as the training probably has changed for
The training has changed. That is something maybe, I don't know if we want to go down that rabbit hole now, but the training has changed a lot, at least in swimming, from your day to now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a hot topic. I mean, I think you look at someone like Michael Andrew, who kind of kicked things off in what year was that? Like 2013?
It was like 2012, 2013.
Yeah.
It's called ultra short race pace training for people who don't know. And essentially just like you're basically going fast all the time. It's not as much volume. And I feel like we had him on our podcast, and there's varying philosophies and opinions around that, but I feel like we have shifted towards more of a focus on power, explosiveness, sprint, and that's kind of cascading throughout the nation.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for the 400 IMers, for the distance swimmers, I still think at the tippy top, those people are doing those things. I just think there's less volume below, which, it's a funnel and I don't feel like we have the same level of volume where club teams are doing the crazy 10,000 meter workouts that we used to do.
Yeah.
That's my opinion on it.
It's, I think another perspective on this, and I agree with everything, is I think the powers that be want to help grow this sport. And people like, everybody nowadays they have very short attention spans, and watching a 50 is a lot more entertaining than sitting down and watching a 1500, which takes 15 minutes. So I think there's almost like a cultural pressure to start training for these shorter events because it's more fun. We're going to add the 50s to the Olympics and World Championships and have these mixed relays, which is great for the sport, but to the detriment of the distance events, which Katie and I used to swim. I mean, Katie still has the American record in the 400 IM from 2008.
It's insane.
16
Yeah, I can't believe
years
you still have
old.
that record.
I can't either. People they're like, wait, you still do? I'm like, I know. Like,
Right.
I don't.
And
even
we're
more
not,
reason for the comeback. Even more reason.
I
Protect
know,
the
right?
record. Protect the record.
Protect the record. Katie Hoff 2.0.
Yeah.
And that is not a knock on the current athletes.
No, not
swimming
at all.
distance events.
Not at all.
But I just
It's a compliment to her and
It's
her
a compliment
training.
to Katie and her training. Like, that is like how far ahead of your time you were. And there, of course, are people putting in the work, getting their asses kicked every day. But I do think those numbers are dwindling, and the numbers are growing in terms of like, being a sprinter sounds a lot better, like more longevity in the sport, probably make a little bit more money, more of a big name. So it's interesting.
Yeah. That's actually a good point of like the recruiting factor of like, you're bringing in like 10, 11-year-olds, you're going to join swim team. What sounds more appeasing, 10 400 IMs or 10 50s off the blocks? Like,
Oh, and by the way, you'll be on every relay and you'll win all these medals, and you're going to be the who's who.
As somebody who was in the sport in the late 1980s,
Tell us, Rich.
grandpa here, it was all about volume.
Yeah.
It was just how much volume can your body handle. So we would do at the most intense periods of the year, like we're 20,000 meters a day, long course, et cetera. And you would just be exhausted. Like from age 15 to 21, I just walked around in a fog, like overtrained, completely exhausted. But the whole idea was beat your body up as much as you can. And it's not like there was no periodization. You just go hard in, every set, every day, and every workout.
Right.
I mean,
Maybe you get one morning off a week or something, and then you roll the dice on a 2-week taper, and sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. And I think we saw massive explosions in world records, setting aside the tech suit stuff, when some consideration went into the explosiveness off the walls and generating power and acceleration, and I think all of those things really advanced the sport. But to your point, both of you, it's a pyramid, right? And at the base of that pyramid is the foundation is like an endurance aerobic base, right? And that only comes through putting in a huge amount of volume. And then as you move up the pyramid, then you get into the specific power and acceleration and strength kind of stuff. And it sounds like maybe you're saying it's tipped a little bit towards that, and maybe it'll find its balance point. But when you look at the times and you're like, it used to be every Olympic trials or every year even, like just world records are getting broken all the time. And that seems to have balanced out. And maybe that's just because human performance is getting closer and closer to, the peak of what's possible, but maybe not. And maybe it does have something to do with the way coaches and the sport itself is like thinking about training and competition. I don't know.
Yeah, no. And I think, and we talked about it, I don't, and I say this again with a lot of passion, I just think the kids are not as tough as they used to be, and that's not.
You're going to throw out that sentence.
Shots fired, Chris. Sure. Yeah,
but it's
bing
not,
bang.
I don't know.
It's not their fault.
Yeah.
But, I think. With
Comments are
Elizabeth and
coming
Katie,
for you.
Yeah.
They can comment.
Old man, grandpa,
I know-
grandpa over here like,
What's he know?
get off my lawn.
The old curmudgeon is, and especially with Elizabeth, I know the work she put in with, two of her coaches, Greg Troy and Chuck Batchelor.
Sure.
That is hard work. And we talk about the physiology, we talk about the physical part, the explosiveness, but there's a psychology, and you just need to be tough, especially for the event they swam.
Gritty.
You cannot just do USRPT and then bust out an American record and break Katie Hoff's American record. You can't. You have to work. You have to put in work.
Yeah.
So
no easy way around
it is maybe some shots fired, but I just think it's because we've all, like I said, I signed up for Facebook. I don't even use it in 2008, but now, kids can, they do their whole, everything
You see
is
the
so
highlight
much
reels
easier.
only. Yeah.
Yeah. So
The other thing that is newer or newish, I think, is awareness around mental health issues.
Yeah.
Like there was no tolerance or room for that conversation maybe until just the most recent Olympiad.
Yeah.
But now it's sort of accepted and embraced to kind of own the issues that you're going through and to take a break when you need to take a break without like risk of whatever. And this is something Mike Gervais talks a lot about. We talk about mental health, or we think about it in the context of something being wrong that needs to be addressed. In other words, like a crisis or a down cycle, as opposed to the flip side of mental health, which is optimizing it for performance, right? Like just like the physical body, the mind and your emotional and psychological state can be honed for heightened performance. And so it shouldn't be thought of as a pejorative. It should be thought of just as, in the same context as we think about physical training. So how do you guys think about that? And what is, with your, being on the deck and being at the pool and around all of these swimmers, like what is that conversation around mental health like at the moment?
Yeah, Katie and I, my first Olympic team in 2008, her second, we didn't even have like a sports psych with us. Like that was like what? I don't.
Yeah.
Why would I need that? And then it wasn't until I think 2016 we, as in Team USA, traveled to the Olympics with a sports psych. And that's kind of at least when I started noticing the conversation picking up a little bit. But
was that, sorry to interrupt, but was that about like, well, if something's wrong, you go talk to them? Or is it like, go talk to them to like elevate?
No, there was definitely still the vibe of like, oh, like if you go talk to whatever
You're
his name was.
freaking out.
Like, ooh, he's not in a good place. Like, you know what I mean?
She's going out the deep end.
And it's like, no, it is we can beat this horse dead, but it is the same thing as going to the athletic trainer and being like, hey, my shoulder hurts. Can I get ice? Yeah. But like, I don't even think we're still quite there yet with the mental side of things. But I do think at least this Olympic team, like being at camp, which we kind of referenced earlier, I was in Croatia leading up to these games with the swim team for a few days, just seeing how they were, the vibe, and they just felt like good, home, at ease. And I think a lot of that has to do with taking care of the mental side. And like I said earlier, those 10, 20 minutes before your race, that's make or break.
Yeah.
And if you can't handle those 10 to 20 minutes, you need to figure out why. And somebody needs to help you to do that.
Or if you think you've got it handled, but maybe there's another level that you can get to.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
And why not explore that?
It doesn't have to be that there's something wrong. It's like, how can I actually improve, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you have been on your own journey, so I would love to hear like.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like it's almost like, use the example of like soft tissue work, foam rolling. Like for me, when I was swimming and now, like I try to do it every single day, regardless of whether I feel sore or not. And I feel the same way about like, even if you're having the best week ever, you still should be going to your therapist because, and I think that now, like every single person, athlete I've talked to, it's become just a normal, like, yes, I have therapy on Thursday. And like, it's just this, like, it's as common as brushing your teeth now. Like,
it's amazing. Because why would you not want to take care of your mind?
Why would you not want to take care of your mind? So I'm definitely jealous because I feel like I didn't have that when I was swimming and it wasn't supported. And now it's just this common thing. And I'm hoping that not only does it help the athletes leading into the meets, but also their longevity in the sport, the way that they look back on the sport. Like, I'm 16 years removed. Like, I wish that I was in Rio and, like coming back to the sport sooner. And I think I'm hoping that these athletes will have this positive relationship with their sport because they have the mental side down.
Yeah. I heard, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that in the Olympic Village, there's like a meditation mindfulness room, a space for that.
That's
which probably,
awesome.
Yeah.
They had it at trials.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, they had like a mindfulness room, and it was actually beautiful. They had like greenery and like dimly, I think they had red lights. Like it was just like a very chill vibe to kind of, did you see it?
I didn't.
It was like right near the warm-up pool, and it was called like the mindfulness area, and I was like, this is amazing. Like even just a place to just like be quiet and get ready for your race.
Didn't they have emotional support dogs too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
At trials, they had emotional
they
support
did.
dogs, like puppies.
Who doesn't like a puppy,
I don't know
though?
how I'm of
right?
two. My grandpa, and like I'm like really like. Part of me's like
come on.
really. You need an emotional support dog that's not even your dog in order to like. Okay.
So I don't know on the Village, but we'll check on that.
Okay.
Like that would be. I mean, I have yet to see anything like that at the pool. But that would be cool if it was actually at the Village.
I'm sorry. I'm like imagining.
He's still in the
imagining
puppies.
like an athlete walking out for finals, but
Walking their
having
dog up to the
having their
block.
emotional support dog on a leash.
That's how we'll
Hey
do it.
Bentley, wait here.
In Los Angeles,
the
Elizabeth will be walking
snowflake
up
Gen Z
to her comeback
generation.
with a dog.
Someday I
know.
find
Katie
myself
and I.
lining up with Chris on like we just need to get a little bit harder.
Well, that is the question though. Like when I think it's swung the other direction of like
Right.
we need to find a happy medium. Like nerves are good sometimes. Being uncomfortable is good sometimes, and it's a hard thing to talk about because what's the like? How do you tell a young person what's tipping over the edge to be negative and what's not?
Yeah, amazing. We're gonna have to wrap this up in a minute, but before we do that, what are you most excited about right now, in terms of like what's unfolding, the stories that are unfolding, what we're about to see, what's happening?
I think for me, living my life at the pool, I'm kind of like you. I'm in my own bubble.
Yeah.
I only know about swimming right now. Like, don't ask me about another sport. I won't know. But I think the youth of our team is looking really good heading into a home Olympics. And that's what I'm excited for. Is like, of course, I'm excited to see what the rest of Paris has to unfold. But I've already got sights on LA 2028 and like home Olympics. You see Léon Marchand win the 400 IM last night in front of a home crowd. That's going to be us
In
as
SoFi-
Americans
SoFi Stadium.
in SoFi Stadium. And I get chill. Like I literally have chills right now.
Crazy that the
in
pool's
4
going to be in
years.
SoFi.
I know.
So cool.
And like, who's it going to be? It might be somebody that's on this team right now that like maybe is making the final, maybe not. Like maybe just a name that we don't even talk about on this podcast or broadcast, but like give it another 4 years.
Yeah.
They're the it name. That's what gets me excited.
What about you, Katie?
I would say it's been really cool to be at Team USA House, which is where basically the family and friends can all gather. And they do this thing every evening where they have, you win an Olympic medal and you go in and it's called the Order of the Ecos. And so the athletes actually are able to recognize the people and person who really made an impact to get them on the podium. And I just feel for the athletes how cool to be celebrated live with their family and friends. And I feel like that's something that we didn't really have. And so watching that happen, it happened to Cook and Bacon after winning the first medal of all of Team USA, and they got to stand up there and everyone erupted and appreciated them. And I just think that's like going to be really cool to see that unfold.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Chris?
Wow. I mean, just like Elizabeth, I think going into a home Olympics, again, having a little bit split, having spent third of my life in Europe, living there, just the new names and kind of seeing some normalcy come back to the Olympics. I'm a fan of the Olympics. and from Rio to Tokyo, it was nothing to do with Tokyo, and it's unfortunate because I don't think Japan got its fair shot to really put on a really
They did
it's
not.
postponing
Right.
for a year,
Right.
But just some normalcy, and of course there's a lot of stuff in the media about about USA and things that whatever, but that they're going to not host the Winter Olympics in Salt Lake, whatever. But I think seeing some normalcy, and I will say a little plug for LA 28. We have a former swimmer who's kind of the big boss there with Janet Evans. So
Yes.
it's going to be really neat. And that's our generation.
Yeah.
You two are a little bit too young, but
John
Janet Evans.
Moffat's involved.
And
in
John
that
is
as well.
We
involved.
love John
John's the
Moffat.
best.
Yeah, Stanford guy.
Yeah.
So.
No, John's a very good
We
friend.
didn't even
Yeah,
talk
yeah,
about this.
yeah.
Oh,
the
I'm
best.
going to text
Podcast
you. We
too.
have to take,
Okay.
we'll take a
Yeah.
picture and send it to John.
That's cool. Yeah. I mean, I'm just delighted to be here as somebody who's been a fan of the Olympics for as long as I could remember, back in the days when we had a monoculture and everything stopped when the Olympics were on and
Yeah.
everybody was watching.
Yeah.
The world's very different now, but that Olympic spirit is alive. It's such an honor and a privilege to be here and to get to talk to people like yourselves and to, bear witness to such a beautiful event. I mean, in a culture that is feels fractured at times, this is something that can unite all of us, and I think that's something that we need right now. And I think so, on a broad general sense, that's what excites me about the Olympics. And of course, then there's just all the stories. Like, what I get excited about are the unknowns that come out of nowhere that you're not following, and suddenly something amazing happens, and it wouldn't be an Olympics without that, and that is already starting to unfold. So it's really cool to be here, and
it's awesome.
we should do this again if you guys want to do it. Like, this was super fun. I don't know
Yeah.
about you guys, but
So much fun.
Blast. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Do I have to go to work tonight?
And you do it with
Let's just
pros,
do round
right?
two.
We got Elizabeth Beisel, who is, an international broadcaster for Peacock and
please,
NBC, in addition to being this unbelievably decorated athlete. And then Katie, podcaster now with the Unfiltered podcast.
I know.
It's
So
awesome.
you're a pro in this
So
space
good.
as well.
I'm not a pro, but
yeah.
I'm making my way.
But
Yeah, you are. It's incredible.
Dominating the swimming, the discourse around swimming in a really cool way. So I think it's
you.
great what you're doing.
Appreciate
and,
that.
Yeah, I'm here to support you in that regard.
I have some questions.
And if you wanna watch the swimming broadcast in French,
Yeah.
Chris is your guy.
Yeah.
Where can you find that on the internet? Like, where do you get?
It's hard, yeah. It's
It's hard.
It's hard.
all right.
Go to the
We're
dark
small,
web.
but,
Anyway.
but it's good, and I've seen a lot of people, and
Right on.
we appreciate you, Rich, because you really help a lot of people and have for years. So
Thank you.
I appreciate what you do.
Yeah. Well, this was great. Thank you so much. It was a real treat. Appreciate it. All right. Postcards from Paris, episode 1, complete.
Is that what you're
Love it.
calling it?
I don't know.
I love that.
We'll
You
see.
should. It's
Yeah,
cute.
yeah.
It's,
Anyway.
I love it.
Good. Approved.
Love it.
All right.
Stamp of approval.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys. Peace.
Hell yeah.